Hi, this is Christian. In this video, I'm going to go over the process of creating a React application, and then we'll get started with the homework assignment for this week. So here is in the Visual Studio Code. If this is the first time you run Visual Studio Code, you see something like this with the welcome page and so on. If this is not the first time, then you will see a list of recent folders listed here. Okay, and you can turn this off anytime by just unchecking this box here. So I'm not going to use this. You can use it if you want to. You don't. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to just turn it off, and you see something like this. So this is your interface here to write your code. On the left column, if it's not expanded, you can click any of these icons here to expand this column here. Okay, this is the Explorer column. So the one we're using is the first one here, which you list all your files and code in here. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to create a folder, and you need to open the folder. It will be a project folder for your project, and so you can go ahead and click open here, and again, and as I put an example, I'm going to create mine inside the documents folder. I have a projects folder here. Inside a folder, I created this earlier already, so you should have nothing there. And selecting the project folder, just click select folder, and it should load that. Probably rerun it again, and you're going to have back to the same page here. Again, I'm going to turn this off by just unchecking this box here and turn this off. Okay, so you should have nothing here yet, but you should have the project folder here. So go ahead and create a folder called Angular if you're in the Angular class, and React if you're in this React class. So in this one, we're using React, so I'm going to open create a folder here. Just click that and then name it, and then call it React. Okay. And then once you have React, again, I installed already, so you should not have anything here, but I'm going to walk you through anyway, just to quickly create an app. And so let's click in here and just go and then right click and open the terminal. There are lots of ways to do it. You can do that. You can do the shortcut here, or you can go to the, I think the edit, I forgot what the view maybe. Yeah, view and terminal. Okay, so shortcut either way. How do you get there? So right click on it, go to terminal. In the terminal here, notice I'm using PowerShell. You can use different one if you want. If you're using CMD, it'll be the Windows command. So I prefer to use PowerShell. And to do that, you just click on here and select default shell. Select that, and it should be listed here. If it's not here, you want to install PowerShell, but it doesn't matter which one you use. It should still be fine. So again, I prefer command the PowerShell because the commands are very related to Linux. Okay, so select that. Once you select that, it doesn't show yet until you close it again and then open it again, and then second time you see that it's now as PowerShell. Okay, so now you should have nothing inside here. So to create your app, as you can see, I already have my my app here. So what you need to do is make sure you have Node.js installed. You should already have that installed, and if you don't have it, you make sure you do that first. So you just have basically follow this command here called npx. It's going to generate a application for us called create react app. Okay, space and the name of the app. Our app is called the Flight app. Okay, I did not call it that. I call it my app, my React app instead, but it doesn't really matter. The name is just the name of the project. So you can call it Flight app as we have it, or if you are building your own, call it whatever you want, and just hit enter, and it's going to run a process of installing all your project for you. I'm not going to do it because it take a while to do that. So once you have that done, then you're going to have something like this, like you see here. All right, the same structure here. You're going to have a node modules folder, a public folder, src, and a git more, and so on. You're going to have a git file in there, which I deleted already. You're going to have a folder called git, something like I just show you dr git. It will look like that inside your git in your directory. All right, you won't see it if you type in ls to list it. You will not see it usually because no, I'm sorry, it's actually it's not here. So what I want to tell you is that if you have a git folder, then you want to remove it. Okay, it's hidden, and so we're not going to do any source control here. You can if you want to, if you know how to do it, but I'm not going to require you to do that. So you can turn that off by removing the .git file. All right, and you can do that by just by listing ls dash, I think a or al, I think. I forgot the command. I think ls.force. yeah, force will show you all the hidden files. Like for example, .git ignore is a hidden file, and you don't see here because it's inside the React app project folder. So if I go in there, okay, if I do it ls, you see that, well, it's already shown, it's visible there already, so that's great. If it doesn't show there, again, do like I did, ls dash force, and then just enter. It will list all the hidden directories. So the .git is there, and then if it's there, just remove it. Just say remove, put the dash force if you want to, and then .git. Okay, and this should remove the git out of that directory so it doesn't track that for you. And if you leave it on, it's going to have numbers on the left side here. Later on, when you make a lot of file changes, you have to add it to the repository, and so on and so on. So, okay, so once you have it created, and then it should be fully functional, right? So just go to the project folder here and just type in npm start, and that is going to run your application. And it's going to use the port number 3000 by default, which I think is the same port as Express.js, which is in Node.js. So it loads up automatically. It should run automatically for you. Open your default browser, and it's over here. I'm going to bring it over here so you can see. And so this is what you see. This is your React application. Okay, so if you see this, then you're good to go. And so we are good. Now, if you press the F12 to inspect what's in there. So you see that if you go to the Elements tab, you see that this is the index file. Inside here, there's a div tag with the ID of root. This is where the React application is injected this whole page into. I mean, not the whole page, but this what you see here inside this div tag. If you expand that, you see it has the div class called app. Inside the app, you have the header. In the header, you have the logo, which is this logo here, and then the text for that, and then the link in the bottom here, and so on. So that's where your app lives. So in the root directory of root component here in this div tag. Okay, and then outside here, these are added inside the HTML file. This is also outside of the HTML file, in the HTML file, but it's not inside the root component here. Okay, so let's go back to the code. So now, if you can leave this running as is, it will be dynamically, automatically updated if you make changes to your code. And if you have two monitors, you can see the result as you make changes to your file. Okay, so you can leave this running. And so I'm going to just close this one out. And if I open the src folder, you'll see here all your React code will be in here. The package.json file is not inside here, actually it's outside of it. This is just a manager. It manages all your application, your dependencies. You can see the name of your app. When you create it, it should have that there for you. You can change it here if you want. All the scripts to run your app and so on. So just keep this as is. And then inside the src is your source. You have the app.js. This is the root component. We call this a root component because there's only one here. And we'll go over this in a minute. So I'm going to leave that open. And then we have a index.js file. This is the entry point to your program, to the app. So as you can see, this line 7 here gives you a clue. Here you see something very similar. It calls a function called render. And this function takes two parameters. You can see here the first parameter is a component. Okay, this is a template, if you will. And then the second parameter is an element target, right? So in this case, this looks very familiar. Document.get element by ID. ID is a root. Well, it tells you that on the web page called index.html, find a div tag or any tag, doesn't matter, that has the ID of root. Okay. And if you open the public folder, there is a bunch of other stuff here, and there is a index file. Open that index file. You see this is the index file to the app we saw earlier, right? All these are already pre-populated for you, and it came by default. But if you scroll down, you see there's a tag here, the div tag that has the ID of root. So that's where it would find this in the folder and in this file and inject that component to this directory here. So again, right, JavaScript, right, you can add it to the DOM this way. So this one here is you can call it whatever you want. You can change it to something else if you like it, but we'll just keep it root for now. Okay, so this one here has to match this over here. Okay, so if you change to something else, like if you put like root 2 here, okay, and if you go back to the browser, your page should crash. If I go and then load it, you see that it's not working, right? If you go to the console, it's gonna say it doesn't know where to go. Okay, so it doesn't work, and so that's important. And then so we want to make sure that it matches a particular root ID here so that it'll work. Okay, so we have the index, the entry point. We have this app here. This tag here is the JSX tag. It's coming from this import from the app file, which is this app here. Okay, if you're not familiar with the import, export, and JavaScript, just make sure you kind of look at the syntax, how it's done. I have a separate video, kind of walk over, show you how that's done in traditional JavaScript, but the same logic applies here because this is, after all, JavaScript, right? So you import from the app file. Now it's important to make sure you put the /. Okay, this means it's in the same directory relative to this file, the index file. That's why you see here the app and the index in the same directory. If you don't put a dot and a slash in front, if you do like that, right, what it would do is that it would treat this as a module or a library that is inside the Node modules folder, and it won't find it because it's not in there. So if you do it this way, you have to put it inside the Node module, which we don't want to do. Okay, so that's why the React here, as you can see, you don't have the slash there, and same thing with the React DOM here. Okay, so all your application, all your components should be inside this source folder, and that you have this slash dot slash for the root, for the relative directory from this position here. And if you want to put inside another folder, which is very common, which is something I also want you to do, is you will put that inside here as well. And I'll show you that in a minute. So, as you can see, the program starts here, this index file. Why? How do we know that? Well, it's the setup. So if you go to the manifest JSON file, this is just, well, this is not it, but it's the manifest here. It just tells you about your application here inside the public folder. The let's see, where is it at? The package.json file. No, where is it at? I know it's in here somewhere. Let's see, app.js. It's one of these. I know it's in here. If it's not the manifest, because it tells you where to go. Let's see. App.js. No, not that it. That's not it. Index. Yeah, I'm not sure where it is. I couldn't find it. It's one of these files, I know for sure. But it tells you that the index file is the root file, and then it will know where to inject that in there. Okay. I don't know. I'm not sure where I put it. Okay, but the whole idea is this. So it will start inside this index file. This function here is coming from this library. It has a render function. It renders this component, this is called the root component, to the HTML page at this tag. Okay, so in this case we have only one root component, and for us we're going to build a single page application, so you'll be using just one single root component, and it will expand on that component. We'll add more and more into the component, and it gets more complicated, more complex, but we'll manage it. Okay. You can have as many as you want. Here, just one component, because you have, if you look at the index file again, it only targets here, right? You can have another one if you want, like down right below it, and maybe you call it root 2, right? And then now you have another, so you can have another file over here, another similar fashion thing here, put it down here if you want, and now I'm talking root 2. Okay, so kind of tricky, but if you save that, if you do it, and if I save both of them, for example, and go back to my browser, and we'll see what that looks like. And I may not like it because it's using, it doesn't like it because I'm using both of those at the same time. I mean, both the apps. It doesn't know how to do that. But again, it's not recommended. I'm just showing that you can do that if this is for a different component. So let's just say if I change this to something really simple, let's just say, h1 high. Okay, you have to close that here. So if I save that, it's a different component now because you cannot, share the same level. Here, if I save that, if I go back to the browser, and let's see what happens. Okay, so you can see that now I have two of them. If I scroll down, you see this is the second component. This black one is the first one. But each of these are two independent components on the same index page. Okay, so that's why it's based on component. You can build the entire page using one root component, or you can add to an existing page and you just pick and choose where you want to inject or add that component like I did here. Okay, so that is pretty much the whole purpose of React and the power of React is you can add a lot of these individual component, right? So for us, we're just going to use one, and I'm going to change this back so that it's only one. So everything will inject or we add it to the DOM tree through this div tag here. Okay. So now, and so as you can see, I'm using a I did earlier was just put an h1 tag in there, right? And it'll work because that is a component already. This is a custom component. This is called a React component because I'm using a React function to create it. Okay, so I import it through here from this file. Now, if you are familiar with, again, JavaScript importing, exporting, we want to do it this way. This is the preferred method to do it because you are separating your files into their own separate files. Because usually you can do it by, moving everything here, like the function here, without all these here. If you want the CSS, you can do that too. But let's just say I'm going to add this function. You can move that to the same file here, right? That will be fine. And that way, then I don't need this import here. I can turn that off because the same function lives in the same space. And so therefore, this app here is the same function here. So as you can see, if I save this, and it should still work, except that I might lose my CSS and so on because it doesn't find the logo here. So it has the information missing because the logo is not there. But you will see that it should work if you put everything back to the original place. I mean, like if you go back here, and because I'm using the logo comes from here and here. So if I copy both of these, right, and put it into the index right at the top here, okay, because they need it inside this app here. If I save that and go back, you see that everything comes back just like before. All right. So, but this is not ideal. We don't want to do this way. I'm just showing you that you can do this way. You can put all your components here in the same file. It gets really ugly, gets really big, so we don't want to do that. So instead of doing this way, we will refactor it by moving all these out, right, to the own function, own file, like we did here, and then at the end we export it. Okay, to export that using this exactly same syntax for now. So that's how it works. And the app here is this function name. Export that out, and then wherever you want to use this again, because now you make this reusable, whereas I had earlier it was not reusable, right, only in here. So now I can then just import it to wherever I want to use that. And I'm going to remove this again, and I use it here in this example here, and and then the way it works just like that, right? So for us, we're not going to mess up with this index much. We'll leave it as is. So all we're going to do is we'll be doing a lot of the work inside this app.js file. And again, this is the root directory, right? The root component. So you're going to add some code in here to make this your web page. Okay. And I'm going to turn this off here. All right. So that is how this works. Now, as you can see, so you're going to build a lot more components. You're going to keep adding to this app.js component here, and we'll add that to uh, um, the area here. Okay, we can delete that out later on. We'll modify that a little bit, and then add more stuff in there. So one more thing about these templates here. Okay, every component inside the return statement here. Okay, for example, if I take this out, I'm just going to cut it out. You'll see that you have an error. It says expected a something, right? Expression. So your return statements here cannot be empty. Okay, you must have a pair of tag in there. Okay, like anything like h1, like a p tag or whatever. You cannot leave it blank. So the component must have a tag. Now the tag in here must have a single root tag. Okay, in other words, I cannot have like two tags like this. I have one here, and down here I have another paragraph tag like that. Okay, you cannot do that either. This is just a rule for React. You can only have one root tag inside each function, each component, and then inside that one you can have nested if you want. Doesn't matter, but it must have a root tag. So it's very common to put a div tag to wrap around the whole thing like that, right? So div tags are usually used for that. And so if you can see, now I have two. Once you have a root component, a root element in there, called the parent element, then inside it doesn't really matter. You can have nested, it has single, as many as you want, it doesn't really matter anymore. Okay? So every component must have one root component. All right? And that's why you see earlier, this one here has a root component is the div tag. Inside here looks very much like HTML. Okay? Again, it's not HTML, even though they look exactly HTML, and that's the whole thing. When I treat it like HTML, all these A tag, P tags are like exactly HTML tags, but they're not HTML. Okay, and I showed you earlier in the other video, you can see that the class is called app. If you put like class like this, like that, okay? If I say that, if I leave it class, typical HTML tag. Now, if you go to the browser and refresh it, okay, probably nothing wrong here, but if you press the F12 key, and if you go to the console inspect, it will tell you that this class is not recognizable by the React DOM. So to say, did you mean class name? Okay, at line 7, app.js line 7. So that's what it means. That's why this is not regular HTML tags. So you have to use the class name keyword or attribute. This is a JavaScript attribute, right? But other than that, the SRC is the same, href is the same, because the reason why class is not allowed because class is a keyword, right? Okay. So later on when you create classes, that's a keyword. That's why you cannot use that. So you have to use the class name as the attribute. But IDs, SRC, href, style, you cannot use style either. And alt, these are very much like HTML. Okay, so yeah, so that is your first React application, and then it's functional. So make sure it's working the way it is. And so in the next video, I'm going to show you how to add Bootstrap to this app to make it more stylized and more, I guess, beautiful, if you will. All right. If you have questions, again, just shoot me email and let me know.